Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material, we tear down all the walls of, the academic jargon, and really just extract the knowledge you need to thrive. And if you've ever opened your laptop for, let's say, an hour of deep focused work.
We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And then you snap out of a trance maybe 45 minutes later, realizing you've just learned everything there is to know about, competitive cornhole on YouTube.
Right.
Then this deep dive is specifically tailored for you. Today, our source material is centered entirely on the architecture of attention. We're doing a deep analysis of Muriel's really influential book, Indistractable.
Fantastic book.
It is. And our mission today is, it's crucial. We want to stop participating in this endless cycle of blaming our phones or the news or social media.
The usual suspect.
Exactly. And instead start understanding the profound internal roots of why we get distracted in the first place. We're here to give you that actionable psychological core you need to actually solve the problem.
That's right. And, for those of you who follow Ayal's work, there's this fascinating layer of paradox here that I think gives this dive immense credibility.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. Ayal previously wrote Hooked, which basically became the definitive manual for companies wanting to design habit-forming products.
You mean addictive products?
Let's call it what it is, often addictive product.
He literally wrote the playbook for distraction.
He did. He knows exactly how the hooks are built because he helped define the architecture. So now, with Indistractable, he's providing the user manual for resistance.
We're reverse engineering the experience.
We are. So knowing that the expert on distraction is our guide here, we have to start with the really challenging central argument he puts forward.
Let's do it.
Let's unpack this crucial insight right now because it really forces a complete reevaluation of how you view productivity. The core thesis, and this is the big one, is this. Distraction isn't, it's not primarily caused by technology. Your smartphone, your social media feed, the constant pings, those aren't the cause.
They're not the villain.
They're not. They are merely the accessible symptom.
So, okay, if the technology isn't the villain, then what is?
The source material argues pretty definitively, distraction is overwhelmingly caused by our inability to manage discomfort.
Discomfort?
That's the psychological root. You know that vague feeling of restlessness? That sudden, overwhelming urge to check your inbox right as you start a difficult task?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
It isn't because the email is urgent. It's because the task you should be doing is generating some form of internal friction.
Like what? What kind of friction?
It could be stress, anxiety, boredom, maybe even fear of failure. Your brain is it's seeking an immediate emotional escape.
That is a fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
We're moving the problem from being like a moral failing or a tech issue.
Right, I have no willpower.
To a psychological mechanism. Distraction is an emotional escape route, plain and simple.
And that reframing, that right there, it instantly defines the battlefield Ayal establishes. He sets up this crucial binary framework for us.
Which is?
Traction versus distraction. These two forces are operating in every single moment of your waking life.
Okay, so let's define them clearly, because I think the definition of traction is often misunderstood.
It really is.
Traction is any action that purposefully moves you toward your goals, your values, your intentions. It's the aligned effort.
So like finishing that critical report.
Finishing the report or spending intentional screen-free time with your kids or, learning a new skill.
And here's where it gets really interesting, especially for you, our listener. If you're seeking balance, traction isn't just about hard work.
Right.
Ayal makes this powerful and I think necessary point that traction includes planned rest and leisure.
Okay, but that's huge.
It is. Yeah. If you intentionally block out 60 minutes in your calendar to play a video game or read a trashy novel.
Or just stare at the wall.
That activity, that leisure time, is considered traction because it aligns with your pre-established intention and values for rest and recuperation.
That distinction is so key. So if I'm scrolling through Instagram, but my calendar says 8:00 p.m. is, intentional wind down time, device permitted, then that's traction.
That is traction.
But if I'm scrolling through Instagram at 10:00 a.m., when my calendar says draft quarterly strategy document, that exact same activity is a distraction.
Yes, because it's pulling you away from your pre-committed intention.
Right.
And so distraction is everything else, is any action that pulls you away from those goals and intentions, and it's typically triggered by that internal discomfort we just talked about.
So the aimless browsing, the multitasking when you're supposed to be focused.
The procrastination spiral that's fueled by, the need to escape an uncomfortable feeling.
So the core lesson of this whole intro is that intentionality is really the only metric that matters.
It is the bedrock. It's absolutely foundational. If you fail to define with concrete specificity what traction looks like in your life if you don't schedule it,
then everything becomes a potential distraction.
everything, because you have no defined boundary to cross. The source material emphasizes this perfectly. A calendar without intention is just a playground for distraction.
You're leaving a vacuum.
You are. And internal discomfort will always, always drive distraction to fill that vacuum.
Okay, so let's jump into the first of the 4 steps AL lays out for becoming indistractable. He calls it mastering internal triggers.
Right.
We've established that the root problem is this internal discomfort. So where do we even begin the psychological work on that?
Well, the work starts by turning inward and becoming a meticulous observer of yourself. These internal triggers, they are the original source of the friction.
And they're not glamorous.
Not at all. We're talking about uncomfortable emotions like boredom, the stress of a looming deadline, anxiety about your performance, loneliness, or just that sheer cognitive frustration when a task is really difficult. Right. These feelings, they are the engine room that kicks off the whole procrastination mechanism.
So let's ground this in a specific relatable scenario. Let's say I'm a student trying to write a complex research paper.
Okay.
I hit a section where I need to synthesize, 3 conflicting data sets. I feel a heavy sigh, a flicker of inadequacy, maybe a stiffness in my shoulders. That physical and emotional reaction, is that the internal trigger?
Absolutely. The internal friction, that sudden urge to just check out. That is the trigger that makes you reach for the nearest, most rewarding, most accessible escape route.
The phone.
Usually the phone. So distraction isn't the cause, it's the instantaneous mechanism for escaping that fleeting, uncomfortable mental and physical moment.
This kind of sounds like a fundamental flaw in the human operating system, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if my brain is designed to avoid pain and seek pleasure, how do I force myself to just sit in the discomfort of crunching those numbers?
And Eel's insight here is, I think, profound. It forces us to reframe our approach entirely. We spend so much time on time management,
Right.
Using apps and to-do lists,
Right.
when in reality, time management is actually pain management.
Wow. Say that again?
Time management is pain management. We are not failing because our to-do list is wrong. We are failing because we avoid the uncomfortable tasks, the ones that require heavy cognitive lifting or generate anxiety, and we seek immediate relief through easy distraction.
That's a really powerful reframing. And it speaks to a deep psychological truth. If I approach a project thinking, this is going to be painful, my brain is naturally going to try to pivot to anything that offers a quick dopamine hit or even just like neutral numbness.
Exactly. And so the required technique to counter this impulse is mindfulness, but not in the sort of vague sense of meditation.
Not lighting a candle.
No, not necessarily. It's in the sense of acute awareness. The goal isn't to eliminate the uncomfortable feelings. That's a fool's errand. You can't. The goal is to notice the uncomfortable emotions as they arise, recognize them as an internal trigger, and crucially, create a gap between that feeling and your subsequent response.
A gap. So if I feel that wave of restlessness or, inadequacy hit, what does the technique of surfing the urge actually look like in that moment?
It's a deliberate 4-step process. First, you just acknowledge the feeling, but without judgment. There's my boredom, or there's my anxiety.
Just naming it.
Just naming it. Second, you get curious about the physical sensation. Where are you feeling it? Is it a tightening in your chest? A jittery hand?
Okay, so you observe it.
You observe it. And third, this is the hardest part. Allow the sensation to exist without acting on it. You are mentally riding the wave of discomfort until it naturally peaks and then subsides.
So we're treating the urge itself like a temporary neurological signal rather than a command that we have to obey.
Precisely. And I'll suggest some simple but really effective tactics for this. When the urge hits, instead of reaching for your phone, try writing down the internal trigger.
Like on a notepad.
On a notepad right next to you. I feel overwhelmed by this spreadsheet. And then physically wait 10 minutes. Set a timer. You're pre-committing to not moving for that 10 minutes.
And what does that do?
What researchers find is that the intensity of that urge, that overwhelming need to check out, it peaks really rapidly and then declines significantly within that short window. By just waiting, you win back control.
So instead of trying to suppress the feeling, which, often backfires and makes it strong.
Always backfires.
We just acknowledge it. There's my anxiety about this presentation. And then you allow the emotion to pass without letting the behavior follow.
You're recognizing the signal without responding to the alarm.
That's a great way to put it.
And this is foundational. I mean, it's absolutely critical because it connects directly back to what we can call key lesson 1. If you don't understand the specific texture of your discomfort, the true internal motivation for your escape behaviors, you will always seek distraction. Mastering the inner game means intentionally creating that gap between the stimulus, which is the discomfort, and the response, which is the distraction. This ensures your actions are driven by conscious intent, not subconscious emotional avoidance.
It's the hardest part of the system, I'm guessing.
It is, but without it, the other 3 steps are basically built on sand.
Okay, so once we've developed that internal awareness, that ability to surf the urge instead of immediately running from it, we can transition to the proactive phase of the IL system.
Yes.
This is step 2, make time for traction. We're moving from reacting to triggers to building a robust wall of intention.
This is the practical, tactical bedrock of the entire system, and it is built completely on the concept of time boxing.
Time boxing.
Yes, and IL is absolutely uncompromising on this. The rule is, if it's not on your calendar, it's not real.
Not just a suggestion.
No, he says this is non-negotiable for becoming indistractable.
When people hear time boxing, they often think of, rigid corporate meetings and that kind of thing. But the scope here is much broader, isn't it?
Oh, much broader. It means detailing what needs to be scheduled across the entire spectrum of your life.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. You must schedule every minute that you intend to spend on a goal. Not just time for deep, complex work, but also specific, contained time for low-leverage tasks.
Like responding to emails.
Responding to emails, internal comms on Slack or Teams, making phone calls, and crucially, going back to our earlier point, time for family, time for social life, time for self-care, and time for rest.
So you're transforming this random stream of obligations into clear, defined intentions.
That's the goal.
So if I block out 3:00 to 4:00 p.m. on Tuesday for email processing, then anything, even another work-related task that pulls me away from that specific inbox task during that hour is by definition a distraction.
Exactly. The intention defines the boundary. And anything that crosses that boundary is a transgression against your own plan.
Right.
And this is the strategic genius of time boxing. It's not just about getting things done. It forces you, the listener, to confront your values. Well, we all say we value health or family or career growth or continuous learning, but AIL forces the question, show me your calendar.
The calendar becomes the ultimate accountability tool. It doesn't lie.
It does not.
If I claim I value learning and professional growth, but I scroll back through the last 2 weeks and there's not a single block of time for reading industry research or taking an online course.
Then you are implicitly stating that you don't actually value it enough to make time for it.
Wow.
It brings painful but necessary clarity to your actions. One of AIL's guiding principles is that knowing your values brings clarity. If you spend time on something, you are stating, by definition, that you value it.
So scheduling just ensures your time reflects what you say matters.
It's an empirical check on your priorities. If you look at your calendar and realize it's 80% shallow tasks and only 5% deep work, you have an immediate, actionable problem to solve.
I think this is where a lot of listeners might hit a wall. I can hear the objection right now. I hate calendars. It feels too rigid.
Sure, my job is creative or my day is unpredictable.
Exactly. I work in a fluid, creative role or a highly reactive field. My schedule is constantly being disrupted by emergencies or client needs. The first unexpected call just blows the whole schedule apart.
And then you just collapse back into randomness.
Right.
That is a completely valid and extremely common concern. And it lets us look a little deeper into the methodology. IL counters this by arguing that randomness is not freedom.
Okay.
Randomness is being subject to the whims of the strongest immediate trigger. A strict time box that has zero flexibility is rigid, and he agrees it will fail.
So how do we build intentional flexibility into a time-boxed system? It sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, but you do it by scheduling buffer time, planning for failure, and having a weekly review.
Okay, break that down.
First, you have to budget time for unpredictability. Schedule 15 or 30-minute catch-up or flex blocks between your major activities.
So if a meeting runs long,
you use the flex block, not the time you scheduled for your next high-leverage task. Second, EL recommends the concept of starting small. If the idea of scheduling an entire 8-hour workday seems overwhelming,
it does.
Then just start by time boxing 1 hour per day. Prove to yourself that you can protect that 1 hour.
I like that. So the goal isn't perfect execution. It's just maximizing time spent on traction.
That's it.
So if I schedule 5 hours of traction and an emergency eats up one of those hours, I still got 4 hours of traction done.
Which is infinitely better than the 0 you might have achieved if you'd left your day completely open.
That's a good point.
And the weekly review is paramount. You have to look back at your time bogs and ask, where did I get distracted? What external trigger sabotaged me? Was it the email at 10 a.m. or did my internal frustration kick in during that difficult task?
So the schedule adapts and becomes more realistic over time.
It iterates. And it all comes down to the difference between being reactive to the emergency demands of others and proactively choosing how you will respond to those demands.
This confirms key lesson 3, which is plan your time or others will plan it for you.
Absolutely. Without that time-boxed calendar, your day is governed entirely by external triggers. The last email you received, the colleague who walks by, the notification ping.
You surrender control.
You do. And control is the goal here. The calendar isn't a prison. It is the shield that allows you to manage those external demands on your terms, ensuring that the work that actually moves you forward gets done first.
Okay, so we've covered managing the inner game, the discomfort, and then establishing the plan with time boxing. Now we have to defend that plan from the outside world.
Which is constantly sending a signal.
Constantly. So we move to step 3, hacking back external triggers. We know internal triggers cause the initial urge, but the external triggers, the pings, the emails, the open office dynamics, those are the easy on-ramps, the escape route.
They are.
So how do we create an environment that automatically defaults to focus?
The central principle here, again, is that environment design beats willpower. This is a non-negotiable truth of behavioral science. Because relying purely on willpower is fundamentally flawed. Willpower is a finite resource. Every time you have to decide whether or not to check your phone, you deplete your cognitive reserves.
It's like a battery.
It is. And by the time 3:00 p.m. hits, you have no willpower left, and you will lose the battle against all those external stimuli.
So we have to design an environment where the temptation is just not present.
Yeah.
Or at least it requires significant effort to get to.
Exactly. So what are some of the practical solutions IL suggests for optimizing our surroundings for focus?
Well, let's start with the big one, the phone.
It starts with a ruthless review of digital permissions. The noise needs to be reduced, and the signal needs to be dramatically increased.
So first, irrelevant notifications.
Right.
I mean, people often allow hundreds of non-essential apps, games, news alerts, random corporate updates to notify them.
Constantly. And the rule should be this. Does this notification require me to act immediately to prevent catastrophe or financial loss?
And the answer is almost always no.
For 99% of apps, the answer is no. You must disable all badges, sounds, and banners for everything non-essential. Just go through your phone settings and mute the world.
I've also heard of using the phone's grayscale mode during work hours.
Oh, that's a great one. It makes the interface visually boring and therefore less rewarding. The colorful icons are designed to grab your attention. Grayscale removes that reward mechanism.
It's a really smart hack.
Second, using Do Not Disturb mode strategically. This is not just for sleeping.
Right.
You should use it religiously during those time-boxed deep work sessions. Many systems even let you set auto-reply so people know you're indisposed, which manages their expectations while you protect your focus.
Third, and this is vital for the modern distributed workplace, setting boundaries at work. How do we handle the tyranny of communication tools like Slack and Teams?
You time-box your communication. You treat Slack like it's email. Don't leave the client open and visible all day.
So you schedule it.
You schedule a specific time slot, say 11:00 a.m. and 3:00 p.m. to deal with messages. Outside of those times, you close the application completely or use a dedicated website blocker.
You used to train your colleagues.
You do. You have to train them that you are responsive but not instantly available. And for a physical office space, use visual cues. Wearing noise-canceling headphones is a universally recognized signal that says, I am currently indistractable and unavailable for quick chats.
The goal here is making the distracting action harder to perform than the traction-driving action, which brings us to another key lesson.
Yes.
The analysis of effectiveness here is key. It's about creating small frictions that create big changes. That's one of the most powerful lessons in this dive.
It's so true. The impulsive urge to check a distracting source is often momentary. It's a flash of internal discomfort or curiosity that lasts maybe 5 to 10 seconds.
Just a flicker.
It's just a flicker. And if you can introduce even a small amount of friction, a little speed bump that extends the process of distraction past that initial impulse window, the urge often just dissipates without you acting on it.
Okay, explain that mechanism in action. What are some specific small frictions we can deploy today?
Simple physical inconvenience is highly effective. Place your phone in a totally different room, preferably out of earshot.
Because you have to physically get up.
You have to physically get up, walk, and retrieve it. That delay, that small amount of physical effort, is often enough to break the impulse.
What about for websites?
You can use website blockers that require you to perform a tedious task to disable them, like logging in, answering a security question, or even typing a 20-character phrase. That delay makes the escape way less attractive than just sitting down and doing the hard work.
We're essentially automating our focus habits so we don't have to rely on a depleted resource like willpower.
Precisely. And once we've managed the internal urges and hacked our environment, Ayal introduces the final and I think fascinating step. This is ensuring that our future weaker self doesn't sabotage the progress we've made. This is step 4. Preventing distraction with packs.
Packs. That sounds very formal. Are they basically commitment devices?
Yes, that's exactly what they are. Packs are methods designed to make your future self stronger by pre-committing to traction. They rely on making the cost of distraction substantially higher than the cost of simply doing the work.
And AL details 3 types.
3 types, yes, and each one targets a different psychological lever.
Okay, so let's look at the first one. Effort packs. These sound like the advanced, maybe even the nuclear option of friction.
They kind of are. Effort packs involve adding significant physical or technological friction before a distraction, and the key here is often involving a third party.
An accountability partner.
Exactly. For example, you use specialized website blockers that require an accountability partner, a friend, a spouse, a colleague to physically enter a code to unlock the distracting site.
So it makes the escape so tedious or inconvenient.
Or embarrassing.
Or embarrassing that you just won't bother. The mere thought of having to explain yourself to someone else is often enough to stop the impulsive action.
Then you have price packs. These attach monetary consequences to distraction. And this taps into the powerful psychological motivator of loss aversion.
Which behavioral science tells us is far stronger than the motivation to gain something.
Much stronger. So this is where you put your money where your time box is. You publicly commit a specific sum of money to a friend, or maybe you use a dedicated service that manages these packs.
And if you fail
to complete your time box task, they get to keep the money. Or, and this is even more motivating, it gets donated to a charity or a political cause you actively despise.
Oh, that's good.
The anticipated financial and emotional pain of losing that money far outweighs the fleeting pleasure of distraction.
And finally, the most powerful of all, the identity packs. This is where we shift our self-image by proactively calling ourselves indistractable.
This is the deep dive into identity psychology, and it's arguably the most potent tool in the entire system.
Why is that?
Well, if you consistently define yourself by a negative identity, I am a terrible procrastinator, or I am always late, you unconsciously allow behaviors that support that negative narrative.
Because our brain seeks consistency. If I believe I am a distracted person, then failing to focus actually reinforces my internal narrative, which is, in a weird way, comforting.
It is weirdly comforting, but if you deliberately redefine yourself internally and maybe even externally as someone who is indistractable, your immediate decisions naturally start aligning with that core belief.
So key lesson 4 is profound. Identity shapes behavior.
It really is.
I move from the internal dialogue of, I shouldn't check my phone, but I feel compelled, which is a draining battle of willpower,
right,
to simply thinking, I don't check my phone during this time because I am an indistractable person.
The action becomes automatic. It aligns with your self-perception. You're no longer fighting the current. You are sailing with the current of your established identity. This is a deep alignment of self-perception and behavioral execution.
Making it the strongest motivator EL identifies.
By far. It turns the resistance into a feature of your character, not just a temporary exertion of willpower.
Okay, we've broken down the entire 4-step framework. Internal triggers, traction planning, external hacks, and commitment packs. Now, to give our listener a comprehensive view, we need to step back and look at the analysis.
Like the critical take.
What does the book achieve brilliantly, and where does it face legitimate challenges?
The strength of this material, as noted by reviewers, lies almost entirely in its pragmatic and psychological approach. What the book does exceptionally well is its strong focus on psychology over moral judgment.
That's a key distinguishing feature. It elevates it beyond standard productivity self-help. EL avoids the typical finger-wagging and the doom and gloom pronouncements that technology is inherently evil.
He does. Instead, he explains distraction entirely through behavioral science.
Yeah.
He provides this non-judgmental framework for understanding why we feel the internal need to escape.
It also offers an incredibly practical step-by-step system.
Right. The 4-part model is clear, it's sequential, and it's immediately implementable. It moves beyond abstract theory into tangible actions you can take this afternoon.
And it challenges that pervasive narrative that technology is the singular villain, correctly arguing that our internal triggers are what truly matter.
And crucially, it maintains balance. Unlike many of these extreme digital detox approaches that suggest, throwing your phone into a river,
Right.
ILI acknowledges that technology is vital for work, for connection, for modern life. The system is about intentional use, using the tools on your terms rather than being used by them.
And we see the methods applying successfully across real-world examples. Students, parents, entrepreneurs, busy professionals.
Absolutely. But now we have to provide the necessary balance and address the potential weaknesses and critiques noted in the analysis. For you, our listener, context is everything.
Okay, so what are the main points of friction or difficulty that reviewers and readers have pointed out?
First, the system requires significant initial effort and self-discipline to maintain, while Ale states that environment design beats willpower.
You need willpower to design the environment.
Exactly. The initial act of setting up the environment, writing the schedule, and learning to surf the urge is emotionally taxing. You need discipline to initiate the habit, even if the habit itself eventually reduces the need for willpower later on.
So there's an activation energy problem. You need energy to set up the system that is designed to conserve your energy.
That's a perfect way to put it. Precisely. Secondly, we mentioned the potential rigidity of time boxing.
Right.
While we did discuss building flexibility in, critics still point out that for individuals with genuinely unpredictable or crisis-driven jobs, like emergency managers, frontline medical staff, or highly reactive sales roles.
Yeah, that detailed hour-by-hour planning model might be less practical.
It might. For them, alternative systems like task batching or priority matrices could be a better fit. The system does assume a degree of control over one's schedule that just isn't universally available.
That's a fair critique.
And a related one is that the book briefly touches on deeper emotional issues but doesn't provide, clinical depth. While Ale identifies internal discomfort as the root cause,
His framework is less equipped to handle clinical challenges.
it is. Distraction for someone with undiagnosed ADHD, severe anxiety disorders, or past trauma isn't just an escape, it's a deeply ingrained coping mechanism.
So those individuals often require professional therapeutic intervention before a purely behavioral framework like Indistractable can be truly effective.
Right. The book addresses behavioral economics, not clinical psychology. That's an important distinction for you to keep in mind.
Okay, and finally, let's revisit the elephant in the room that critical reviews often highlight. The fascinating irony.
The hooked problem.
The hooked problem. Ale wrote the manual for designing addictive products, and now he's teaching resistance. Critics ask, is this a conversion, or is it just a savvy marketing pivot?
It's a fair question to ask.
I find this paradox actually makes the advice stronger, as we kind of alluded to earlier.
I agree completely. For me, it enhances his credibility. Who better to explain the traps and provide effective countermeasures than the person who knows exactly how those traps are designed and deployed?
Right.
His solutions for creating friction, the PACs, the environmental hacks, they're so precise because he understands the fundamental psychological triggers that companies employ to maximize our engagement.
He's not guessing at the defense mechanisms. He is reverse engineering them based on knowing the attack vectors.
Yes, the fact that the architect of the hook is giving us the blueprint for the unhooking, it validates the specificity and the effectiveness of his countermeasures.
So it suggests these aren't just feel-good solutions.
No, they are engineered defenses against engineered distraction.
That contextual analysis rounds out the picture beautifully.
Yeah.
So now, let's consolidate the core concepts for our listener. Let's bring all 4 steps and the analysis together into a few definitive takeaways to internalize and, start implementing today.
Let's do it. We'll start where the journey must begin, with the psychological foundation.
Primary lesson. Distraction is an emotional escape. It is not a technology problem. The phone is just the accessible tool. Your internal discomfort is the actual driver. If you master your internal friction, you gain control over your focus.
Secondary lesson. Time management is therefore pain management. You have to learn to notice and surf the urge, allowing that discomfort to exist without immediately responding with an escape behavior.
Third, planning your time is non-negotiable. Time boxing means you are proactive, not reactive. You decide what's important before the pressure of the moment hits, and you schedule time for work, for family, and for rest.
Fourth, identity shapes behavior. The act of calling yourself indistractable is the highest leverage tool in the whole arsenal because it leverages your self-perception to automate alignment with your goals.
And fifth, environment design beats willpower. Build small, deliberate frictions into your life. Remove the triggers and the easy escape routes, and you reduce the need to expend your finite willpower automatically.
Given the comprehensive nature of this four-part system, the framework is incredibly highly recommended for students, remote workers, entrepreneurs, and really anyone currently overwhelmed by the constant digital demands of modern life.
It really is a strategic toolkit for reclaiming sovereignty over your mind and your schedule.
It is. And the ultimate application here, if you connect the themes back to your immediate life, is profound. Mastering discomfort leads directly to mastering focus.
You stop running from the hard parts of life, you stop feeling guilty about your leisure time, and you start using your time intentionally rather than impulsively.
This dive offers a clear, actionable path to cognitive and temporal autonomy.
A perfect note to wrap up this deep dive. As you go about implementing these 4 steps, especially step 4, creating those identity packs, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you transition back to your day. If the identity pact is the strongest tool for change, the act of calling yourself indistractable and letting your behavior align with that future self, what past self-image or limiting identity are you currently holding on to that is secretly fueling your need to escape via distraction? Are you still carrying the narrative of the procrastinator or the easily overwhelmed one? How do you consciously update that core narrative? And what space does that fundamental identity shift free up in your calendar for true, unencumbered traction? Think about that narrative shift. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.